Hi, cool cats. So I was watching the Spoony Experiments. What's that, you might ask? Well, have you ever heard of that guy with the glasses? The nostalgia critic? No? Well, you guys suck! So I'm watching Spoony's videos about Final Fantasy VIII, and I was reminded about the great RPGs of my childhood. And now I was sucked into the hype. Final Fantasy VIII was not my first RPG, not by a long shot. Lunar, the Silver Star Story Complete was. So one thing led to another, and then I got into Final Fantasy VIII. A friend lent it to me, and I played it up until the third disc. Then I had to give it back. I loved the game so much that I went ahead and bought it a month afterwards. This was back in 2001 maybe? Oh, about 2003 I got Final Fantasy VII. A lot of people gave it a good review. The things they said about the game, I thought I was guaranteed a masterpiece. People confessed to crying after Aerith died. Outright confessed! So I got the game in LA, in some game shop in Hawthorne, along with Final Fantasy IX. This was about a year after I read Losers, of course. Eric Schoenig did a strip about Kingdom Hearts and one of the name changes on one of the characters in Final Fantasy VII. Aerith to Aerith? Yeah, I agree with Eric on this. People that played the original game either agreed to the name change or they absolutely hated it. After playing Final Fantasy VII, well, I understood the haters. Aerith sounds stupid. It sounds like with a lisp. In conclusion, well, Spoony was right about Final Fantasy VIII. It sucked major balls. If you looked at it now, well, we could agree why it sucked balls. The fighting system was kind of changed, was kind of screwed, and the magic system just, I don't know. It took a lot. It was flawed in that sense that you had to draw magic as opposed to using it right away, like having an MP bar. They totally got rid of the MP bar. And well, I played it and I loved it. I loved it enough to buy it, and even though the game sucks balls, I'll still give it a good review. It was great for the time. Other than how emo it is, what can you say that's bad about Final Fantasy VIII? Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII changed the way that the games were made. And well, they're still great, but they're still gonna, suck. So what does this have to do with anything? Well, I was reminded of Final Fantasy VII, I was reminded of Final Fantasy VIII, I was reminded of Final Fantasy IX. Now, why I didn't talk about Final Fantasy IX as much as I did about Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII? Well, it had no lasting impact on me, like Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII did. I loved Final Fantasy VIII. I thought that it was the better of the games for the PlayStation at the time. Final Fantasy VII, while being the first on the new console at the time, was boring. The first disc was boring. It bored me to death so much that I hated Final Fantasy VII. I hated the hype about it, and I did not cry when Aerith died. I didn't. I had no emotional attachment to that game. What was your favorite Final Fantasy? Tell me. I mean, if you played Final Fantasy 7, 8, 6, 5 from before the PlayStation era. My favorites are Final Fantasy 8, Final Fantasy 12, and Kingdom Hearts. Like, comment, share, subscribe.